We cannot bury it, Raoul said slowly. The queens did not keep it hidden for greed. They kept it safe until the right time. If we walk away, the knowledge will be lost forever. Worse, others like Vargas will come again. They will break it open with force. Only by understanding it ourselves can we protect it. Lena agreed, though her heart was torn. But we must be careful. The knowledge is powerful. If we open it fully, humanity may not be ready. We could bring danger we cannot control. The crystal pulsed as though it had heard them. The glow spread across the walls, forming new images. This time the murals showed two paths. One showed the chamber sealing forever, its light fading until nothing remained. The other showed a starship rising from Earth, its sails made of golden light. The queens' faces appeared again, their eyes closed but their meaning clear. The choice is yours. The villagers knelt, frightened by the vision. It is a warning, one of them whispered. To open the sky is to invite disaster. But Raoul saw something different. It is not only a warning, it is an invitation. They are asking us to decide if humanity is ready. He turned to Lena, his voice steady. We have been tested. We chose life. We faced our truth. We passed the trials. They would not have shown us this if they believed we were unworthy. Lena looked at the glowing ship on the wall. Her chest tightened with both fear and hope. If we accept, then we carry a burden. Once the path is opened, there is no turning back. The chamber shifted. A hidden door opened behind the crystal, revealing a stairway spiraling downward. The air that rose from it was cool and carried a metallic scent. The queen's voices whispered once more in their minds. The heart of the chamber waits. Choose and you shall know. Raoul and Lena lit their torches and stepped forward. Mateo tried to follow, but Raoul stopped him gently. This path was meant for us. If we fail, then you must seal it. Promise me. Mateo nodded reluctantly, his eyes full of worry. The stairway seemed endless. Each step echoed against the stone as if the chamber itself was listening. Finally, they reached a vast cavern. In the center rested something neither of them expected. A ship. It was not made of stone or wood, but of metal fused with crystal. Its shape was smooth, curved like the body of a bird. Golden lines ran across its surface, glowing softly. The sight stole their breath. This is it, Lena whispered. The legacy. They built it with knowledge from the stars. The ship was silent, yet it seemed alive. As they stepped closer, the golden lines brightened. The hull opened, revealing a passage inside. Raoul's hands trembled as he touched the entrance. This is the choice. If we step inside, we accept the Queen's legacy. If we walk away, the chamber will close forever. Lena stared at the glowing doorway. Images of Vargas and his men flashed in her mind. She imagined them returning with more weapons, breaking through the jungle until nothing remained. She also imagined the future, the stars above waiting for humanity to rise and join them. She turned to Raoul. We cannot hide. If we do nothing, others will come. Better that we carry this gift with respect than leave it for those who would abuse it. Raoul nodded. Then we accept. Together they stepped into the ship. The interior glowed with soft light, the air warm and clean. Panels of crystal lit up as they walked, displaying symbols and maps. The star path appeared again, stretching into the galaxy. The Queen's voices filled the ship clearer than ever before. You have chosen. The legacy is yours. Carry it wisely, for it belongs not to one but to all. Raoul and Lena felt the ship hum beneath their feet. It was not only a relic, it was alive, waiting for hands to guide it. They had unlocked the heart of the chamber, and the choice had been made. When they stepped back into the cavern, the villagers were waiting above. The crystal's glow filled the stairway, brighter than ever. Mateo looked down at them, his voice trembling. What did you see? Raoul raised his eyes, his voice steady. We saw the future, and we chose it. The chamber pulsed once more like a heartbeat that echoed through the earth. The silent queens had given their final test, and humanity had accepted. Now the path to the stars was open. The cavern glowed with golden light as Raoul and Lena stood inside the ancient ship. The walls shimmered softly, and the air thrummed with energy. The ship was not dead. It was waiting. Every line of gold across its surface pulsed like veins carrying life. For a long moment, Raoul and Lena simply stood in awe, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of what they had chosen. Outside, the villagers waited nervously at the top of the stairway. Mateo looked down at the two explorers and called, What does it mean? What is this place truly? Raoul stepped forward, his voice firm yet calm. It is the inheritance of the queens. They were not only rulers of this land, they were guardians of a path to the stars. And now that legacy has been given to us. The ship stirred as if agreeing with his words. A low hum filled the cavern, steady and strong, and the golden lights brightened. The crystal above in the main chamber answered, its glow spreading down the stairway until the entire cavern was bathed in warmth. The villagers fell silent, no longer whispering in fear but gazing with reverence. Lena placed her hand against the smooth wall of the ship. Images filled her mind, not just visions but instructions. She saw hands of queens touching the same walls, their crowns glowing as they guided the vessel. She saw stars, distant worlds, and knowledge exchanged like gifts. The queens had not built this alone. They had been trusted with it by those from beyond the sky. She turned to Raoul, her eyes wide. It is more than a ship. It is a library, a teacher, a bridge. It holds knowledge of the stars. They left it for us, Raoul nodded. His voice was steady, though his heart raced. Then this is why we were tested. Not for gold, not for power, but for the strength to carry this flame with care. The ship's interior opened further, revealing seats shaped not for one, but for many, panels lit up with maps of constellations, their golden lines stretching into infinity. Among them, one star pulsed brighter, the same one shown in the murals. It was a destination, a beacon calling across time. Matteo and the villagers approached the stairway slowly. "Will you go?" he asked. His voice was filled with both fear and hope. Raoul looked at Lena, then back at Matteo. "Not yet. Humanity is not ready to leave this world, not as it is. But when the time comes, this ship will rise. Until then, we will protect it." The villagers bowed their heads. Matteo spoke with quiet strength. "Then you are the new guardians chosen by the queens. We will help you keep it safe." For several days, Raoul and Lena studied the ship. They recorded the maps, traced the golden lines, and copied every symbol into their notebooks. They learned that the ship's heart was powered not by fuel but by light, drawn from the crystal above. They saw that it could fly beyond Earth's sky, but only when awakened fully by those who carried both wisdom and respect. On the fourth night, Raoul dreamed. In his dream, the silent queens stood before him. Their crowns shone brighter than the sun, and their eyes were no longer closed. They looked upon him with calm acceptance. One queen spoke without words. "You have chosen well. The flame is yours to carry. Guard it, share it. When the time is right, light the sky again." When he awoke, he felt no fear, only peace. Lena had dreamed as well, and in her dream, the queens had handed her a scroll of gold that unrolled into the stars. She understood its meaning. Their legacy was knowledge, and knowledge must be shared with wisdom. The next morning, Raoul and Lena sealed the stairway carefully. They covered the entrance with stone and earth so that only those who knew the truth could find it again. The villagers swore to guard the secret, just as their ancestors had done. Before they left, Raoul stood once more before the crystal in the main chamber. He bowed his head. "We accept this inheritance. We will guard it until the world is ready." The crystal pulsed gently like a final blessing. The faces of the queens appeared one last time, their eyes open now, filled with calm light. Their voices echoed through the chamber. "The silence is ended. The flame is yours." With that, the visions faded, and the crystal dimmed to a steady glow. It no longer felt like a test. It felt like a companion, a reminder that the queens had passed on their trust. Raoul and Lena left the jungle with heavy packs of notes and sketches, but their greatest burden was not on paper. It was in their hearts. They carried the knowledge of a path beyond Earth, a gift given across centuries, and the responsibility to guard it. As they walked back through the dense forest, Lena whispered, "The world will never believe us." Raoul smiled faintly. "Not yet, but the day will come when it must, and when that day comes, humanity will look to the stars and the silent queens will not be forgotten." The jungle closed behind them, green and endless. Deep within its heart, the chamber rested once more in silence, its crystal glowing softly, its ship waiting patiently. The inheritance of the queens had passed into human hands. It was no longer just a secret of stone and gold. It was a promise of flame carried forward, waiting for the moment when humanity would rise to meet the stars. And in that promise, the silent queens were no longer silent. They lived on in every heartbeat of the chamber, in every star glowing above, and in the choice Raoul and Lena had made for all humankind. The desert stretched without end, Its sands were golden under the burning sun, and the air shimmered like glass. For many, the desert was a place of silence and death. But for Mara, it was a place of questions. She was a young researcher, calm and steady, with eyes that always searched the horizon. With her team, she traveled across the dunes in a rover, following a strange signal no one could explain. The signal had first appeared 2 weeks earlier. It was faint, broken, and seemed to come and go like the breath of the desert itself. The machines in their city could not understand it. Satellites could not lock onto it. Computers called it nothing more than noise. But Mara believed it was something real. She said that sometimes the desert spoke in ways that machines could not hear. Her words made others laugh, but in her heart she felt certain. Her crew trusted her. There was Pharaoh, who always fixed the machines when they failed. There was Nima, who kept maps in his memory better than any screen. And there was Sana, who brought courage to all with her quiet strength. Together they rode across the endless sands, trusting that Mara's belief was not just a dream. The rover moved slowly. The dunes were high and steep, and the heat pressed down on them. They carried water in silver flasks and shaded their heads with white cloth. Even so, the desert tested them with every step. The air inside the rover was heavy, and sometimes the wheels sank deep into the sand. At those times, Pharaoh would jump out, his boots sinking, and guide the rover forward until it was free again. The desert seemed determined to keep its secrets. As night came, the crew set up camp under a sky full of stars. The desert night was not silent. The wind whispered across the dunes, carrying grains of sand that tapped against the tent. In that sound, Mara felt as if the desert was alive, listening to them, perhaps even judging them. Inside the tent, they gathered around a small device that caught signals from the air. Mara turned the knobs gently, her eyes sharp with hope. The others watched as the machine hissed and crackled. Then for a moment, a clear tone rang out. It was soft, steady, and strange. It lasted only a few seconds, then faded back into noise. "That is no mistake," Mara said firmly. Nima leaned forward. It sounded almost like a bell. But why here in the middle of the sand? Sana's voice was low. Maybe the old stories were true. Maybe something lies buried here. They all grew quiet. Every village near the desert had old tales. Some spoke of a king of gold who ruled before memory. Some said storms rose to hide his resting place. Others said that he had left gifts for those who proved their worth. Most dismissed such stories as myths. But the signal in the air was real. It made the crew believe there could be truth in the tales. The next day, the desert grew harsher. Winds rose, carrying sand into the sky. The storm pushed against the rover, and the world turned into a sea of moving gold. Their machines lost connection. Screens went dark, and the compass spun without direction. But still, Mara's heart told her to press forward. She felt the signal calling, guiding, even when all technology failed. Inside the storm, the crew could see nothing. The sun was gone, hidden by the rolling sands. The rover shook as if it were a ship in a great ocean. The sound of the wind was louder than thunder. Yet Mara's voice stayed calm. "Do not fear," she said. "The desert is only testing us. If it wished to stop us, it would have already taken us. This storm is only a veil." The others listened to her steady tone, and their fear lessened. Together they drove onward, trusting not in their machines but in themselves. Hours passed, and then suddenly the storm weakened. The sand fell, the wind eased, and the light of the sun returned. When the crew looked ahead, their eyes widened in wonder. Far in the distance, half buried in the dunes, stood two golden shapes. They rose from the sand like towers shining in the sunlight. The storm seemed to circle them as if protecting them, yet leaving a calm space around. Mara felt her breath catch in her chest. "The tomb," she whispered. "We have found it." The others were silent. Their journey had only begun, but already the desert had shown them that this was no ordinary place. Here machines failed and storms obeyed a hidden will. Here only human faith and courage could carry them forward. Mara stood at the edge of the dune, her eyes fixed on the golden towers. The signal pulsed once more through the machine in her hand, strong and clear this time. It was as if the desert itself was welcoming them, or warning them, or both. And so the first step into the mystery was taken. The crew had entered a land where history and legend were one, where gold guarded secrets and where the desert itself watched every move. Humanity had come to prove its worth. The morning sun rose like a golden fire over the dunes. The desert looked calm again, as if the furious storm of yesterday had never existed. Yet Mara and her crew knew the desert was alive in its own way. It tested them, sometimes with silence, sometimes with rage, and now, with the golden tower shining in the distance, it seemed to wait for their next step. Mara stood outside the rover, her feet sinking slightly into the sand. The towers were not close, though they seemed to gleam just beyond reach. She studied the horizon carefully. The air between the dunes shimmered, and the ground seemed to move like water. It was the heat, but it also felt like more than heat. It felt like the desert itself was shifting the land to guard what lay ahead. "We cannot reach them quickly," Mara said. "The desert wants us to earn every step." Nima shaded his eyes with his hand. "It looks near, but I can tell it is far. The dunes curve in strange ways here." Taro was already checking the rover. He shook his head. "The sand is soft. The wheels sink too deep. We will need to walk part of the way." Sana filled the water flasks and tied them to her belt. "Then we should leave the rover hidden here. If the storm rises again, it may bury it, but at least we will not lose all our strength pulling it." Mara nodded. "We will carry what we can. The towers are waiting." The signal grows stronger. "I feel it," so they set out on foot, walking in single line across the sand. The heat pressed on them like a heavy blanket, but they kept their eyes forward. Every so often, Mara checked the small receiver in her hand. The strange tone that had first called to them was now stronger, steady, like the beat of a hidden drum. As the hours passed, the desert seemed to resist them more. The dunes rose higher, and the sand slid beneath their feet. At times it felt as if the ground pulled back with each step. The wind blew fine dust into their faces, making them squint. Yet they pressed on. Machines would have turned back long ago, but humans had patience. By noon, the heat grew fierce. They rested in the shade of a dune, though there was little shade to find. Taro used his toolkit to check the receiver, worried it might overheat. But the small device worked better than before. In fact, it seemed almost alive, pulsing in Mara's hand with every tone it sent out. "It feels like it wants to guide us," Mara whispered. "Like it is not just a signal but a path." Nima frowned. "A machine cannot want. But this feels different. Almost like someone is calling." Sana spoke softly. "Maybe the desert itself is calling, or something buried in it. We must listen." When they rose again, the desert began to show them strange signs. The sand no longer looked smooth and endless. Instead, they saw patterns. Circles of stones half buried, lines carved into the ground, shapes that reminded them of stars. The more they walked, the more such markings appeared, as if guiding them toward the golden towers. By late afternoon, the air grew heavy. The wind shifted, rising and falling in strange bursts. Clouds of sand formed on the horizon, then faded again. The storm was not yet here, but it was waiting. The desert was alive with tension, like a great lion ready to strike. Suddenly, the receiver in Mara's hand gave a sharp tone. Not the steady beat they had heard all day, but a new sound. It was higher, brighter, almost urgent. Mara stopped and raised her hand for silence. The others froze. In the air ahead, the sand moved in strange swirls. The dune seemed to rise, though no wind touched it. The sand spun upward, twisting into a shape that looked almost human, yet not human. The crew stared in awe. The figure of sand stood tall, faceless, yet alive. It did not move forward, but it blocked the path. The wind around it roared, though all else was still. "The desert awakens," Sana whispered. The figure raised its arm, and the receiver gave another urgent tone. Mara's heart raced, but she stepped forward. Her voice was steady. "We have not come to steal. We have not come to break. We seek only to learn. If this is your land, show us the way and we will honor it." For a long moment, the figure did not move. Then the sand began to fall piece by piece. The swirling slowed, and the shape sank back into the dune. The air grew calm again. Nima studied the dust. "Maybe the answer is here. The tomb wants us to use our minds, not only follow signals." They knelt around the pool. When Mara stirred the dust with her hand, it formed shapes, stars, rivers, mountains. The images shifted quickly, like a map alive with motion. At last, the dust settled into the shape of a star with one bright path leading from it. That path pointed to the doorway on the left. Sana smiled faintly. "It shows us the way. The tomb speaks in its own language, and we can learn it." They followed the left passage. The air grew heavier, filled with a strange hum that vibrated in their bones. The walls here glowed faintly, lighting their way without lamps. As they walked, the hum grew louder until it became a soft song, rising and falling like a voice. It was not words, but it carried meaning: patience, courage, unity. Mara's heart lifted. The tomb teaches us as it tests us. It shows us what it values. Not strength, but spirit. At last they reached a final doorway. It was tall and arched, carved with flowing lines that looked like rivers meeting at the sea. In its center was another hand-shaped mark, raised and waiting. Mara stepped forward again. Before she touched it, she looked back at her crew. We came this far together. The tomb may open only if we are united. Place your hands with mine. One by one, Taro, Nima, and Sana placed their hands beside hers on the glowing shape. At once, the door lit up with brilliant light. The lines flowed like rivers of fire, joining together, rising higher until the whole doorway shone. The ground shook and the walls around them sang like voices in a choir. The door opened slowly, revealing a chamber beyond. The air was brighter, and at the far end stood the Golden Guardian once more. It had moved here ahead of them, waiting. Its eyes glowed brighter now. Its staff struck the ground once, sending a soft echo through the chamber. The test of the maze was over. The true challenge was about to begin. Mara whispered, her voice steady. We are ready. The chamber glowed with soft golden light, and at its far end stood the Guardian. It was taller than any human, its body smooth and shining like metal alive. Its staff gleamed as it rested against the ground, and its eyes burned with a steady glow. Mara and her crew stood together, their breath quiet, their hearts beating fast. The Guardian did not move at first. It only watched them. Its presence filled the chamber with weight, not of anger but of judgment. It seemed less a soldier and more a judge, waiting to see if they were worthy to continue. At last, the Guardian raised its staff. A deep tone filled the chamber, vibrating through the walls and into their bones. The ground shifted and the golden sand at their feet began to rise. It formed shapes, walls, paths, and puzzles that moved around them like a living maze. The Guardian spoke without words, its challenge clear. They must prove themselves again. Taro muttered, It is not here to fight us. It wants us to show what we can do. Mara nodded. Then we show it who we are. The first trial began. Before them rose 3 tall pillars, each with symbols carved into their surface. One showed the sun, another the moon, and the last a star. Between the pillars lay golden tiles with markings. When Taro stepped forward, some tiles sank beneath his feet, sending waves across the floor. He quickly jumped back. Nima studied the symbols. It is a pattern. We must step in the right order or the floor will trap us. Together they traced the carvings on the pillars. Mara saw that the sun connected to the moon, and the moon to the star. She guided her team to step across the tiles in that order. Slowly, carefully, they crossed the floor. Each step lit up beneath them like fire, but the path held strong. When they reached the far side, the Guardian lowered its staff slightly. It was watching and it approved. The second trial came swiftly. The golden sand rose again, this time forming walls around them. They were trapped in a shifting maze. The walls moved like waves, opening one path while closing another. It was a place that no map could hold. Sana placed her hand on the sand. It feels alive. But if we listen, we may understand. Mara listened to the faint hum in the chamber. It was the same song they had heard before, full of rhythm. She realized the walls moved with that rhythm. When the hum rose, one path closed. When it fell, another opened. By following the song, they moved through the shifting maze. The sand resisted, but they kept faith, and at last they stepped free. The Guardian's eyes glowed brighter. It raised its staff again, and the final trial began. This time the challenge was not walls or puzzles. Instead, the sand formed shapes of people. Figures of golden dust stood before them, each one tall and strong. They were not enemies, but reflections. One looked like Mara, another like Taro, another like Nima, and another like Sana. The crew stared at their own golden doubles. The figures moved, copying their motions. When Mara stepped forward, her reflection did the same. When Taro lifted his arm, so did his double. It wants us to see ourselves, Nima whispered. But why? Mara thought carefully. She understood the meaning. The tomb wanted them to face not traps or riddles, but their own truth. Were they united or divided? Were they selfish, or did they trust each other? She turned to her crew. We cannot move forward alone. We must act together. Only then will the Guardian believe us. So they joined hands and walked as one. Their reflections copied them, moving in the same way. When the crew spoke words of trust, the golden figures echoed them, their voices soft like wind. Slowly, the reflections dissolved into light, sinking back into the sand. The chamber grew still. The trials were complete. The guardian stepped forward at last. Its staff no longer pointed in challenge. Instead, it touched the ground gently. The chamber lit up and the walls glowed with bright rivers of gold. The guardian's eyes dimmed slightly, no longer burning with judgment but with calm. It raised its head and spoke for the first time. The voice was deep and steady, not harsh but heavy with meaning. You came not with greed but with spirit. You faced the desert with patience, the maze with wisdom, and yourselves with truth. You are worthy to walk further. The words were not spoken in any known language, yet the crew understood them in their hearts. They felt the meaning more than they heard the sound. The guardian turned, and with slow steps it moved to the far wall. The golden surface parted, forming a doorway. Beyond it lay a deeper chamber, glowing with soft light. The guardian stood aside, its staff resting by its side. It no longer blocked their way. Mara bowed her head slightly. We thank you. We will honor what we find. The guardian did not answer, but its silence was full of peace. Together, Mara and her crew stepped through the new doorway. The air inside was cooler, filled with a faint golden mist. Ahead they saw shapes glimmering, round orbs, shelves of strange objects, and walls covered with symbols brighter than before. Their journey had carried them past storms, gates, and trials. Now the tomb was opening its true heart to them, and the treasure waiting within was not gold to spend but knowledge to share. The doorway closed behind them with a soft hum. Mara and her crew now stood in a chamber unlike any they had seen before. The walls glowed with gentle light and the air shimmered with golden mist. It was calm and quiet, but not empty. The chamber seemed alive, like the inside of a heart that had been beating for centuries, waiting for this moment. Rows of shelves stretched across the hall, but they were not filled with books or stone tablets. Instead, they held orbs of gold, each glowing faintly from within. Some shone like tiny suns, others like pale moons, and others sparkled as if full of stars. The light from the orbs reflected on the crew's faces, filling their eyes with wonder. Sana whispered, "This is not treasure for the body. This is treasure for the mind," Mara nodded slowly. "Knowledge. This is what the Golden King left behind. Not wealth, but wisdom." They moved deeper into the chamber. The orbs seemed to hum as they passed, faint sounds like voices speaking from far away. Nima paused beside one, drawn by its soft glow. When he reached out and touched it, the orb lit brighter, and images filled his mind. He gasped, pulling back in shock. "What did you see?" Mara asked quickly. Nima's eyes were wide. "Stars, maps of the sky, but not as we know it. New paths, new worlds, whole constellations that no one has marked. It is as if the orb holds the memory of the heavens." Pharaoh touched another orb, curious. His breath caught. Machines. Great ships crossing space, built not of steel but of gold and light. They moved without engines. They sailed on something unseen. It was beautiful. One by one, the crew touched the orbs. Each orb revealed a vision. Rivers flowing through deserts that bloomed with green, towers that shone brighter than fire, people walking among stars without fear. The visions were not dreams. They felt real, like records of a time long past, a time when humans had walked hand in hand with powers greater than themselves. Sana's voice trembled. "This is the memory of a people who came before. They lived with knowledge we cannot imagine, and they gave it to the tomb, to protect it until we were ready." Mara looked around at the glowing orbs. The desert, the storms, the guardian, the trials, this was all a test. Not to keep people away forever, but to make sure only those who were patient, wise, and united could reach this place. The tomb does not guard gold. It guards truth. As they explored, they came to a tall pillar in the center of the chamber. Unlike the shelves, it held no orbs. Instead, its surface was covered in carvings that glowed brighter than the rest. The carvings told a story. The Golden King was shown leading his people, raising spheres of light to the sky. Then came storms, shadows, and silence. The king stood alone, sealing his wisdom inside the tomb. Nima traced the carvings with his hand. He did not hide it for himself. He hid it for us. He wanted his knowledge to live beyond his time, to help others who came after. Suddenly, the pillar glowed brighter. A beam of golden light rose from it, spreading across the chamber. The orbs shimmered, their hums joining together in a single song. It was not a song of sadness, but of hope. The chamber itself seemed to speak. "You have entered with respect," the voice said, though no lips moved. "You have faced the desert, the maze, and the guardian. You did not take with greed, but sought with spirit. So the memory is yours. Carry it into the world and let it live again. The crew listened in silence, their hearts heavy with awe. The words were not in their language, yet they understood every meaning. It was not speech, but truth shared directly with their souls. Mara stepped forward. We will honor this gift. We will protect it, and we will share it with those who are ready to listen. The golden light grew softer, as if satisfied. The song faded, leaving the chamber quiet again. The orbs still glowed, but now they felt warmer, as if welcoming the crew. Sana looked around, her eyes shining. We cannot carry all this knowledge in our hands, but maybe it does not want to be carried. Maybe it wants to be remembered. Mara nodded. She held the receiver in her hand. It hummed with the same tone as the orbs. Somehow it had been guiding them all along, connected to the tomb. She realized now it could carry pieces of the wisdom back with them. She placed the receiver against one of the glowing orbs. At once, golden light flowed into it, filling the device with new strength. The hum grew louder, steady, alive. Mara smiled. It will travel with us. The desert chose us to carry its voice. The crew stood together, surrounded by the light of the tomb. They felt both small and great, small before the ancient power of the Golden King, yet great because they had been trusted with it. The treasure had been revealed. It was not jewels or gold, but the wisdom of ages, a light that could guide humanity forward. The tomb had not been a prison of death, but a library of life. As they prepared to leave the chamber, the walls shimmered gently, as if the tomb itself was breathing with peace. The desert outside would still test them, but the greatest test was already behind them. They had found the treasure, and they had been judged worthy to carry it. And so their steps turned toward the way out, but their hearts carried more than they had ever dreamed. Humanity had been trusted with memory written in gold. Now it was up to them to keep it alive. The golden chamber grew silent once more. The light faded to a gentle glow, and the orbs on the shelves hummed softly like a lullaby meant for the ages. Mara and her crew stood still, letting the moment sink into their hearts. They had been trusted with knowledge that could guide not only them, but their world. Now the tomb waited for them to leave, carrying its memory beyond the desert. Mara lifted the receiver. It glowed with a soft golden pulse, steady and calm. The device felt heavier in her hand, yet it was not weight that she carried, it was wisdom. She turned to her crew. We must return. The tomb has given us its gift. Now it is our duty to share it. Taro adjusted his pack, his eyes lingering on the glowing orbs. I wish we could take them all. But I know this treasure is not for the hands, only for the spirit. Sana's voice was gentle. The tomb will keep them safe. It has done so for centuries. What matters is that it trusted us with even a part of its light. Together they walked back toward the doorway. As they stepped away, the Golden Guardian appeared once more. It no longer carried its staff in challenge. Instead, it stood tall like a sentinel bowing to honored guests. Its glowing eyes dimmed slightly, almost like a smile. Then it raised its staff and struck the ground. The chamber shuddered. The door behind them opened, revealing the path back through the tomb. The Guardian stepped aside, silent but full of meaning. Mara bowed her head. Thank you. We will not forget. The crew moved through the halls again, but this time the tomb felt different. The walls no longer shifted to confuse them. The paths were straight, and the glowing symbols guided them forward like lanterns. What had once been a maze was now a clear way out. It was as if the tomb itself was leading them home. When they reached the outer gate, the golden doors opened without a sound. Fresh air swept in, carrying the dry breath of the desert. Outside, the night sky stretched wide, full of stars. The desert was calm, its wind soft. It seemed the storms had chosen to rest. They stepped out onto the sand, leaving the tomb behind. The doors closed gently, sealing the treasure once again. But this time, the desert felt less like an enemy and more like a guardian watching over them. For a moment, they stood in silence under the stars. Then Nima spoke softly. The desert gave us storms to test us, but now it gives us peace to return. It keeps balance, Mara nodded. Yes, the desert is not cruel. It is a teacher. We faced its trials, and now it gives us its gift, the chance to carry wisdom back into the world. They began their long walk to the rover. The dunes shifted quietly under their feet, but the path no longer felt heavy. Each step seemed lighter, as if the desert carried them forward. The receiver in Mara's hand pulsed gently, its hum blending with the wind. By the time they reached their camp, the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Golden rays spilled across the dunes, turning the desert into a sea of fire. The crew paused to watch the sunrise. It felt like a farewell from the tomb and a promise of new beginnings. Taro spoke, his voice steady. We are only 4, but what we carry could change many. We must protect it from those who would misuse it, Sana agreed. Knowledge can heal, but it can also harm if taken with greed. We must be careful. Mara looked at each of them. Her eyes were tired but filled with quiet strength. We will protect it. We will share it only with those who are ready. That is the trust the tomb placed in us. We cannot fail it. They entered the rover and began the journey back across the desert. The dunes rolled endlessly, but now the signal guided them with ease. There were no storms to block their way. The land seemed to open itself, clearing a path for them. Days later, as they left the desert behind, Mara looked back one last time. The golden towers were hidden again, swallowed by sand and silence. To anyone else, the desert looked empty, but Mara knew better. The tomb still waited, guarding its light until another worthy soul would come. She whispered quietly, almost to herself, "Thank you, Golden King. Your gift will not be forgotten." The wind carried her words across the dunes, and the sand shimmered in answer. When they reached their city, the crew shared their journey carefully. They spoke not of treasure, but of memory. They showed only small parts of what the receiver carried. Maps of stars, fragments of knowledge that could help without harming. The people listened with awe, and many felt hope rise in their hearts. The world had long looked at the desert as a place of emptiness, but now it knew the desert held wisdom greater than any mine or machine. It had tested humanity, and humanity had answered. The gift of the Sandstorm tomb was not gold to be spent, but courage, patience, and knowledge to guide the future. Mara and her crew knew they were only the beginning. Others would come, perhaps years or centuries later, but the tomb would decide again who was worthy. Until then, they would carry its light, and so the desert rested, the storms quiet for now. Beneath the endless dunes, the tomb still breathed, still watched, still waited. Its golden heart beat softly, keeping safe the treasure of ages. Humanity had been trusted, and for the first time in a long time, the desert gave not only trials, but also its gift of peace.